So tell us just how integrated American tech is in our lives.
It's got to be one of the sectors and one of the parts of our daily lives that are the most integrated. Maybe other top ones are financial services. You've got to think of MasterCard, Visa, the US dollar, maybe American culture as well, being a everyday presence in our lives around the world. But tech is really up there. If you think of anything you do throughout the day, messaging friends, working, using documents, uploading, downloading files, there's a high chance you're passing by US software nearly all of the time and US hardware a lot of the time as well. So people now wanting to boycott America and wanting to punish the country that elected Donald Trump for the kind of reasons that we've just been hearing in that interview, or simply because they don't want their data to be used for profit by the tech barons that supported Trump. It's now not just the realm of certain privacy geeks to want to turn away from American products. And some even worry that Trump could maybe use our data as a bit of a bargaining chip or threaten to cut it off even in the future if he can wield tariffs like on cognac, steel, cars in this way. What could he do with our data? And we've seen the kind of disruption that happens when America blocks access to something like TikTok, even though that's not an American app, and that happened under Biden. Trump has threatened the EU to drop its efforts to regulate tech. So how far might he go on this?
Well, I mean, as you know, in our daily lives, we see the US and tech products from the US everywhere.
Yeah.
But are there parts of tech that the US doesn't control?
Yeah, there are definitely critical parts of the supply chain that aren't in the US. So, for instance, semiconductors, they're largely made in Taiwan. The machines that make semiconductors, they're made in the Netherlands. You've got cobalt from the DRC, lithium from Australia, rare earths from China. But crucially, the companies that control these supply chains are largely American. So anything you do on a mobile is likely controlled by Google or Apple. Most of our devices are. Anything you do on a desktop, well, that's going to be Apple or Microsoft, the top two operating systems. Cloud services now as well. Google, Amazon, and Microsoft control most of them. So even services that are tech related, that are built outside the US, heavily rely on US software for its underlying parts. I'm thinking, for example, of browsers, search engines. Google is quite necessary for those as well.
And these boycotters that we've mentioned, what steps are they taking to disconnect?
Yes, you'll find no shortage of lists online of recommendations from Europe. I'm thinking particularly of the Reddit page Buy from EU, which has now ballooned to about 200,000 subscribers. And some alternatives there are actually better than the American equivalent. So something like DeepL is very good for translations. Proton is a very viable email alternative. Le Chat, France's AI chatbot, is one of the fastest, if not one of the best. But the truth is that a lot of the software still built in the EU is quite quaint. I mean, I'm thinking particularly of messaging services and social media. Are you going to use them if your friends aren't on them? Probably not. And then there's the difficulty of switching, right? So switching operating system, cloud service, password manager. Some people might find that interesting, enjoyable. Others will likely find it a huge headache. And particularly in the mobile systems, that's where it's so difficult to rid yourself of Google or Apple, for instance.
Well, the EU is trying to tackle America's tech monopoly too, isn't it?
Yes. So if you're in the EU as a consumer, you're not alone, because your governments and the EU as a whole are also trying to break open these so-called closed walled gardens. So the Digital Markets Act antitrust law is slowly trying to open up what it calls gatekeepers and allow, for instance, other non-American companies to profit from the monopolists' services. So, for instance, AirDrop might soon work with non-Apple devices. The proof will be in the pudding, though, and that's enforcement. The Act stipulates that the EU can fine up to a tenth of these companies' global annual turnover. Will they go that far? It says they can even fine them up to a fifth of their global annual turnover for repeated infringements. Now, we know the EU fined Apple 1.8 billion euros last year, but Reuters is reporting now under the DMA we might see some modest fines for Apple and Meta, particularly given Trump Trump's threats to slap more tariffs on countries that impose fines on American companies. And as for the tariffs he's already imposed, well, the Financial Times did report on Thursday that the EU is considering retaliating with moves on American digital services. This could mean, for instance, preventing companies from receiving revenues from software updates or streaming, or maybe even restricting the intellectual property of big tech. But I mean, for now, while we wait for all this to work out, in any case, I don't know if you want to rid yourself of American tech, maybe the best idea is just to throw your phone in the river, escape to the woods or something like that.
Well, advice to our viewers.